back to Haj Radio. Today we have a very interesting, unique, and new show for you, inshallah, on Haj Radio, which will be running throughout the month of Dhul Hijjah. And this show, inshallah, is titled A Walk in My Footsteps. And what this show is all about is coming to understand people who we usually misunderstand. So a lot of us are born, we were not born, but we get taught certain things. We come to see things in certain ways. We have misconceptions. And a lot of times this affects the way that we see other people, other human beings in different situations. And all of that affects the way that we are, how we treat people, how we behave with people. So inshallah, throughout this series, we want to bring people from all different walks of life to tell you what life is like when you walk in their footsteps. So inshallah, today we want to start that off by talking with our brother Arif. Arif Varaji is from Help the Homeless Leicester. Alhamdulillah, well known to most of the people here in Leicester. Runs the homeless food bank service on a weekly basis and also helps people being accommodated into housing. So the reason we've called Arif here is to give us some insights into the lives of the homeless people and people in need that he works with on a regular basis. Assalamu alaikum, Arif.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
I'm good. I can't complain. Alhamdulillah.
Good, alhamdulillah. Arif, are you out and about today doing some of your outreach work? Is that correct?
That's right. I'm just currently on the way to work. 5:30 to 8:30 is part of a scheme that we run with the council where we go onto the streets and basically look for homeless people that are rough sleeping and then kind of verify the details, the circumstance, the situation, and then either offer assistance by way of getting them some kind of shelter accommodation by the council or one of the maybe B&Bs or the hotels that are affiliated with the council, and then working forward from there, depending on the person's situation, working out a solution that's suitable. Obviously, you obviously help people in similar situations, the people that we help as well. So not everybody's story is the same, not everybody's situation is the same. So, the regular channels are always available for everybody. You've got people that are, in the throes of addiction. They've got other kind of problems as well. You have, mental health problems. You've got alcohol issues and substance issues. So it varies.
Yeah, so this is a little bit of stuff that we wanted to get into today throughout the show because, like you said, this show is about walking in people's footsteps, understanding life from a different perspective where we might not always see it. So obviously, like you said, you go around, you do this critical service of helping find people who are struggling, sleeping rough, need a little bit of support, and you're offering them that guidance. But what I really wanted to talk to you today about is these misconceptions, these backgrounds about the people that you're talking about, the things that the general public might not know and might not understand. So one of the questions that I did want to ask you, so I wanted to run through some of the misconceptions or the thoughts that people have, and you let us know, is that a misconception? Is that the way it is? How different is that? Is that okay? Could we do that?
Of course you can. No problem.
Inshallah. So hopefully people are listening and we'll get this shared out later as well. But we hear a lot of things, Arif. I'm sure that you've heard it as well. One of the things that I used to get told a lot of the time is, why are you helping these guys? They're like this, they're like that. So I'm sure that you've probably had comments like that as well. So we know that a lot of the things that we hear, so one of the misconceptions is if you walk through the city centre or you walk around places, the people that are sitting on the streets or people that are struggling, asking for money, that none of those people are really homeless. So that's one of the thoughts that people have. What's your take on that? From you, obviously you've worked in this, you've come across many of these people on the streets, and then you've gone on to help people into housing. So what's your thoughts on this conception that people are not really homeless, the people that are sitting on our streets and asking for support?
Well, like I said, working directly with these people that are living the street lifestyle, as we call it, I say up to about 80 to 85% of the people that you see on the streets begging for money are probably not homeless.
Yep.
So, that might come as a shock to quite a lot of people. It may not. But that is something that we've kind of identified over the years. So a lot of people, unfortunately, have, like I said, substance issues, addictions, etc., that we need to see the habits. And that is probably one of the main reasons why they are willing to do what they do, where they're sitting on the street begging for money, pulling on people's heartstrings, and then obviously doing whatever they do with that money. I mean, you could be this is from what the information that we've gathered over the years, speaking to certain people that we've helped, etc. You could be a person who's got no begging skills at all, sat with a cup in the middle of town centre. This is pre-pandemic, of course, when everyone was there was football around the city centre and stuff, and you still make £10 to £15 a day just by sitting there. So the guys that have got the stories, they've got maybe. They know how to beg, and they can cry and turn on the waterworks. And unfortunately, that is what a lot of people do as well to get money out of people.
Yep.
They're coming out with 50, 60, 70, £80 a day tax-free cash, as well as the benefits that they must be getting, as well as whatever other food they must be getting from food banks, etc. So that money that they're getting by begging, they are literally using that to fund their habits, and that is the hard truth, basically.
Yeah, so there are, that's something that we've cleared up for people, and that's something that I know, and obviously having worked in this field, that a large portion of the people that do ask for funds and stuff that are sat on the streets are not necessarily genuinely homeless, but in that mix, there are also people who are, and you're not really able to tell as a member of the general public who is and who isn't, are you?
Definitely not, 110%. You can't tell as a member of the public. The only reason why we now know is because we work with the local city council. We're getting names, we're getting full background pictures, a HPI check, so to say, on people. So we get to know, but on a name basis, the circumstance of people and obviously what help they've been given already, what they've refused or what they've had to revoke from what they've been given in the past due to whatever situations have arisen. So it goes a lot deeper than that. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if people are on the street, like I said, just because of the fact that maybe they have an addiction they need to feed and they're out begging for money doesn't mean that we don't offer assistance with regards to like food or clothing and stuff, because I believe feeding anybody who wants food is something we should be doing as human beings anyway. So we don't draw a line with regards to assistance in that way. But all it is, I like to highlight the fact that people are saying, well, I gave that guy a pound or I gave that guy 50p. It's not just a matter of you giving that 50 pence or a pound, or it's not a lot of money to you, but that soon adds up. Then make £5 or £10, then enable them to then go and do, fund the habit basically. And if you're comfortable with that, obviously that's entirely up to you. But me personally, it doesn't sit right with me knowing that my monetary donation is going to be then spent for someone to go and buy maybe some drugs or alcohol or whatever it is. Technically killing themselves with it. So, it's called killing with kindness. That's what I call it.
So, as you said, like we, as a general member of the public walking down, you couldn't necessarily say that guy isn't homeless and that guy is. There's some that are and there's some that aren't. So, I guess rather than people just withholding from supporting people, what they should be doing is obviously approaching charities that are working in the correct channels and have verified people. And that's the best way to support these people. But one of the other things that I wanted to draw into was, so one of the other conceptions that we have of the people that genuinely are homeless, who you come across, we hear a lot of people say, well, it's their own fault and they want to live on the streets. So what's your take on that? Do you come across people that want to live on the streets? It's a life that they choose. What's the situation?
You do get some people that prefer to live on the street. So unfortunately, they do refuse any help that's given to them because they're happy and comfortable where they are. In the past, we've had situations where we've assisted people off the street, and within 2 days, they're like, I can't do this. I need to be back on the streets again and give up their tenancy. And then don't forget, we're just talking about street homeless here, but then you've got situations of people that are hidden homeless. So, for example, somebody who's sleeping on a friend's sofa for the last 6 months, technically that person is still homeless, just because the fact that they're living obviously on somebody's sofa and they've got a roof over their head temporarily doesn't mean that the person has got a permanent fixed abode. So there's that as well. Or you've got people coming out of prison, for example, who maybe were living with a partner who's no longer with them, or maybe they were living with a parent who's no longer there anymore. So then people coming out of prison to no fixed abode are also homeless people that we work with as well. And then you've got situations like I come across an Indian Muslim Gujarati gentleman who was 72 years old, and he's being forced out of his house where he's living with his son. So again, that's somebody who had somewhere to stay with his son, but because of the situation at home, obviously he's no longer able to stay there. You've got to like kind of work different channels to make sure that person gets the assistance that he needs, and obviously get him into some kind of suitable accommodation. With him being the age that he was, we were very lucky that we worked with the housing association and got him sorted within about 4 or 5 days. So alhamdulillah, that was an easy and quick win because of the links that we've built up over the years with different housing associations, etc. So, like I said, there's no fixed pathway for any one person. Everybody's situation is different, and based on that is the way you basically can help people.
So what I wanted to draw from that is, although there are some people who make that choice to be on the streets, it's where they feel more comfortable. And again, there's a lot of complex issues that go behind that. It's not necessarily that they're in the right frame of mind when they make those choices, but a majority of people are in that situation because of other circumstances, not because they've chosen that this is what they want to do. They want to live on the streets and they want to ask people for money. There's lots of people that just don't have a choice. That's how they've ended up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, because of the fact we work with people that have lived the street lifestyle, a lot of the stories you hear about, it goes all the way back to childhood. Yes. Traumas that they've received.
This is something I really wanted to draw on as we work through the next thing that I wanted to say was, so one of the other concepts is that everyone who's homeless is a drug addict.
Well, that's definitely not true, because I just told you about scenarios. For like example, the 72-year-old Gujarati Muslim gentleman, he's definitely not a drug addict.
Yep.
So it's not necessarily true, because we've got this stereotype of a homeless person being somebody sat on the floor in a sleeping bag, curled up in a corner, etc., dirty, scruffy, maybe not change their clothes or had a shower for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But that's not homelessness is a lot broader and a lot wider than that.
Yeah, because I remember I used to work with a homeless gentleman, and he was strictly no alcohol because his mother was an alcoholic, or his father, one or the other was an alcoholic. So it was strictly no alcohol. So he was he was a recovering drug addict. He was previously addicted to heroin. He was clean for around 10 years on the alternative treatments from the NHS. And he wasn't that image that people portrayed him to be. So we have this image that these people just choose to be in this situation. They're just drug addicts. That's why they are in this situation. But of course, we both know there's lots of people who end up in this situation who are not drug addicts. They're not substance abusers. They've just ended up in this situation due to different situations. So we can't really paint everybody with the same brush when it comes to that. But the other thing that I did want to ask you as well was, when you do find people who suffer from addiction, so it becomes easy, and I've always found it's very easy to say, well, it's his fault, he's an addict. But you, I'm sure now will know from your work, just as I do from my work, that if you look into when these people became addicts and why they became addicts, what kind of stories do you hear from people for what their childhoods were like, what happened in their lives, what their situations were before they ended up on this path that they're on?
The stories that you hear, there's a wide variety of stories. So you've got people that were abused as children by parents, by one parent, by uncles, aunties, all that kind of stuff. From that to having very disturbed childhoods, a lot of violence involved. Sometimes poverty does play an issue, a part as well. Lack of father figures, another one we hear a lot of. So single parent, usually if the child stays with a mother and they've not had a father figure to kind of influence them or assist them in making certain decisions. One story sticks in my mind a lot, and I've used this example a few times. It's a gentleman who's now 33, and he's been in prison, I think, since he was 14, on and off, quite regularly, basically. So he's currently actually inside right now. And he said his trigger point was when he was about 13, I think he said I was a really bad kid, very naughty, always getting into trouble, and he was answering his mother back. And at the time, his mother was with her boyfriend, and she said to the boyfriend, basically, say something to him. And he goes, well, I can't. He's not my son. And that for him, he goes, was the point where I just thought, I don't care anymore. And that's when he went off the rails, literally. That's his words. So there's a lot of reasons why I guess people suffer different kind of traumas, and kind of what leads them down certain choices and pathways that they then take that and maybe where they end up in being addicted to substances or misusing substances and that kind of stuff. So as we know, for homelessness, you've got your drugs, alcohol, are two addictions that are kind of like pivotal, and also gambling's a big one as well. With gambling, the thing is you don't actually see or smell that on a person. But at the same time, while they're addicted to gambling, their bank account is getting decimated until it goes too far, and then literally people are losing houses, that kind of stuff, and then they're on the streets. We see that so many times people come to us for assistance, and they're actually giving us a story of successful businesses they've run or they were running only as little as like maybe 6 months ago, and then obviously everything's just turned around and they wasted the money away on gambling and that kind of stuff, and in the end they're kind of like destitute, literally living on the street, coming to us and taking used clothing off us. And one guy, I remember, he came to us and he took a t-shirt off me, and I think some fresh underwear and stuff, and he goes, you know what, I used to wear £400 t-shirts once upon a time, look at me, literally. And it just shows that this can happen to anybody if you make the wrong choices in life, literally.
Definitely true, and I think that's why I really wanted to drum across home during this segment. Was it's very easy to just point at people, say, well, he's an addict and therefore it's his own fault, but a lot of the times we just don't know, and a lot of us can't even imagine the stories that some people have. So like you said, the abuse as children. I mean, I've had grown men cry just because I sit with them and they say, you're one of the few people that treats us like a human being. And for people to find that so moving, it just kind of shows you what they've experienced throughout their lifetime. Not long ago, I came across a guy who was a male, and some other males basically attempted to abuse him. So many of these stories, people who don't have their parents, whose parents don't want to look after them. So there's actually a lot of people, and I think what many people don't know is a lot of the homeless people actually have parents, they have families, but they don't live with them. And their parents don't necessarily call them in. So the misconceptions, number one, that we covered is, number one, not everybody is an addict. And many people who are homeless and in these situations are not addicts and have ended up in these situations for a variety of different reasons. But number two is that even when somebody is an addict, it's not as easy as saying, well, this is your fault. This is a situation. People sometimes made these choices to start these drugs when they were barely children, when they were 12, 13, 14. And of course, it's not easy to then come away from that. And a lot of that, what happened to them, is because of difficult situations that they grew up in and things that many of us can't even understand. So one of the next things I wanted to ask you was, a lot of people say, well, this is the United Kingdom, it's not really possible to be homeless. You just got to go to the council and they'll support you and get you a house. So how true is that, or how much of a misconception is that?
Sorry, say that again. I just missed that last part.
So a lot of the people, we have a conception that this is the United Kingdom. So you can't be in poverty, you can't be homeless. We have a welfare state. So all you have to do is go to the government, go to the council, and they'll help you. They'll give you money, they'll give you a house, and it's just as simple as that. So if you've not got all of that, there must be something that you're doing wrong. How right or wrong is that conception that it's easy
that's
to
very wrong. That's very wrong. Just a simple fact of how much our food bank service is utilised would show that, and not just ours. There's so many different food banks around at the moment, serving different areas, and it's at an all-time high, the usage of food banks at the moment. So you can say that you may get your benefits from the government, or you may get housing, but that is just a base need, getting the roof over a person's head. But then maintaining that property, budgeting. It's unbelievable how many people don't even have enough money to buy milk. Literally, some people actually have to have cereal with water.
And even those that are homeless, for example, how easy is it really for them to turn up to the council, say, I don't have a house, can you please help me get a house? How easy is that process really? Does it really work as simply as people think, where you'll just turn up and the council will start giving you benefits and give you a roof over your head?
No, definitely not. So many people just don't know how to navigate the system. They don't know what forms they should be filling in, how to access those forms. Basically, it's the list is endless. It's not easy out there. It's definitely not easy out there. It's not as simple as turning up at the council's doorstep and saying, right, I'm homeless, help me. There's queues, there's lists. Some people are waiting for accommodation, and sometimes they've been on a list for 2 years, 3 years, and they've still not got their accommodation sorted because they're slowly moving up that list, but it hasn't been. They've not got it yet. I mean, I know a lady who's basically there's 4 of them, and they're living in a one bedroom flat, and they've been on the council list for literally, I think, nearly 3 years, and just now they're coming to the top, towards the top of the list after 3 years. So they've lived in, at least they had a roof over their head, but a one bedroom property for 4 people is not suitable. But at least they had a roof over their head, though. That's the way they look at it. So they're really grateful of that. But it just goes to show that it's taken 3 years to get to the top of the list to find something suitable for that family.
So yeah, that's again another point that I just wanted to get across to the viewers. So it's not as simple as saying, well, we live in a welfare state, so if you're homeless, you'll get sorted out straight away. It just doesn't work like that. And if it did, there wouldn't be people like Arif doing the role that he's doing, because it would all be looked after. Unfortunately, it's just not that simple. So I know, Arif, that you don't have very, very long remaining. You've got around 7 minutes before you start going on to do the outreach work that you're doing.
Yep.
But I had one last question for you, if I can remember it. It's just slipped from my mind after all this conversation that we've been having. So we've gone through all of these issues, and we've talked about how people perceive all of these things. But you get a lot of people who aren't eligible for any kind of UK funding as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, of course. You get those people that are maybe just maybe refugees, or maybe they're still going through the process of the right to remain here. So they're on X amount every week, maybe £20 or £30 or whatever it is. They again struggle to make ends meet. And then also you've got the situation where some people who are eligible for any kind of benefits are turning up for assistance as well. And then, or some people that maybe have started the process and, but the forms are still going to take another 3-4 weeks to complete. So what are they supposed to do for them 3-4 weeks when they've got nothing? That's where obviously food banks come in, people that are providing hot meals, that kind of stuff comes in, and they pick up the slack kind of, I guess, so to say. Also, you've got to understand people don't have money to buy food. They're not going to have money to buy essentials like underwear, shampoos and shower gels, toothbrushes, toothpaste. Alhamdulillah, we've got all that here. And other charities that need that kind of stuff, we also give to them as well. So it's all about working together to basically make people's situations better. And alhamdulillah, like I said, it started, when I started back in 2014, literally from the boot of a car. And it was nothing. It was just like a little thing we used to do every week to where we are now, which is like we've got so many links with different organisations with the local authority. The police regularly ring us with people that need assistance. You've got people turning up our offices in town asking for simple things like even just semi-skimmed UHT milk or a fresh pair of boxers or anything. So it just shows how far we've come, but how much the service is needed. So it's very difficult out there, and if you are a person who's not struggling or have got no struggles money-wise, etc., count your blessings. Alhamdulillah, count your blessings, because you know what? It is very hard out there for people that are struggling. Indeed, it's not easy at all.
It really is. So I got 2 last questions for you, the last 5 minutes, inshallah. So one of the last questions I had for you was, so another thing that we'll hear commonly is get a job. They'll say, work hard, you can get anywhere you want to in life, so why don't you just get up and get a job? So how easy and simple is it? Because I've got my own experiences. I know what it was like when I tried to help people on the streets get jobs, but from yours, how easy is it for someone who's on the streets to just go and get a job? How easy, how simple is that?
It's not easy at all. Firstly, a lot of the times you need an address. If you're homeless, how are you going to have an address? But then also you've got the other situation of, look, for example, a person that you're assisting to housing. So the benefit covers that aspect of it, covers the housing benefit covers their rent, basically. But the minute they start working, and they've got to then start paying their own rent, because obviously the housing benefit stops. But then if you're on a minimum wage job where you're only bringing in literally about the same amount as what you would get if you were, actually it works out probably less than what you'd get if you were on benefits, then where's the incentive for a person to start working for minimum wage when they get more money for not working, and they get the housing paid for, the council taxes paid for, the bills and all that kind of covered in the universal credit. So where's the incentive to make people want to work when they're going to be worse off by working? And that's the benefits trap that needs to be discussed and sorted out by Whitehall and central government, because it's not encouraging people to actually get off, get out of the benefit system and actually start working. That's the problem.
And also what I've found as well is, I don't know if you've come across this, is when employers or potential employers know that a certain person is homeless, they become very reluctant to hire that person. So when we were trying a while back to help certain people get jobs, the attitudes of the employer were basically like, well, how can we trust them? They're homeless. How can we let them be around our money and our business? So I don't know if you've seen any of that, but that's something that I've seen anyway for homeless people.
It is right what you're saying, but then there's also employers that will champion. Will really encourage homeless people, ex-offenders, that kind of stuff, to come and work for them. So basically jobs like maybe, I don't know, working in a recycling plant, sorting out cardboard from plastic, that kind of stuff. It's a step in the right direction. It's a step on the ladder of employment, and it's a step of kind of getting out of the rut that you were in into some kind of normality. So there are jobs out there, but it's about whether the person wants to do that. Secondly, like I said, are they going to be worse off or better off for working? That's another thing.
So there we go, inshallah. So in this segment, we've learned some amazing things from talking with Arif, who is the founder and runs the Help the Homeless Leicester group. So we've learned so far that, not everyone necessarily that you see on the street is homeless, but you cannot distinguish who is and who isn't. So it's probably not a good idea to treat somebody as if they're not. But obviously, one of the avenues you can go through to help people is to use legitimate charities who are making the effort to take the time to distinguish and verify people. We've also learned that it's not as simple as saying that everybody chooses to live on the streets. They don't. The majority of people end up there because of the situations that they're in. Thirdly, we have the conception that everyone who's homeless is an addict. Again, Arif has come on and told us that is not the case. There are lots of people in these situations that are not addicts. They're just in these situations because of the circumstances. And we also learned that even when people are addicts, a lot of that started when they were children, and a lot of it started because of the situations they were in their lives, and they're still suffering today because of the decisions they made when they were 12, 13, 14 years old. So we've learned a lot of valuable insights into what it could be like to walk in the footsteps of somebody who is struggling on the street. So Arif, Jazakallah khair for calling in. I know you've got to do your outreach program now from 5:30. Is there anything you want to say to people, how they can find you guys, support your work?
Yeah, just the usual social media platforms, Facebook, etc. Help the Homeless Leicester. If you want to donate, you can donate regularly. You can donate one-off, and your money that you donate will go directly to helping those people in need, whether that's via food, whether that's via helping people get into accommodation, getting off the streets, or maybe even something like us buying boxes and underwear to give to people that they obviously can't afford to buy. So, like I said, just check us out, and feel free to donate. Any questions, my number's on there. Give me a ring, and if you want to get involved, you're more than welcome to.
Okay, Jazakallah khair for calling in, and inshallah everything goes well, and Jazakallah khair for your amazing work. So guys, if you were listening, we've learned a lot throughout this show so far today. You can go and support Arif and the work they're doing with the homeless through Instagram, Facebook, call them, get involved. But more importantly, what we learned is what it can be like when you look at life from another person's perspective. So we went through a lot of these common misconceptions that many people have about a person who's homeless or struggling. So we've gone through this idea about people being on the streets and saying that, well, they're not really homeless. So we've talked about the fact that we just simply can't judge that. There are people who are, and there are people who aren't. We're not really in a position professionally to actually sit there and say, well, he is and he isn't. So don't treat people as if they're not, because you don't really know if they are or they aren't. And the second thing that we learned was when it comes to saying that everyone chooses to be on the street because the UK is a welfare state. How can anybody be in such a level of poverty that they're sitting on the streets? Maybe they're choosing to be on the streets because if they go to the council, they should be able to just sign up, get benefits and get a house. But we learned from people working in the sector such as Arif that simply isn't the case. It's really not that simple to prove to the council that they owe you a duty of care first and foremost, and then you can be on waiting lists for years, and you have to know all the correct paperwork and everything to do to navigate the system. And not everybody is educated to the level where they're able to easily do that. So it's not a simple case of choosing to live on the streets. A small portion of people have lived on the streets for so many years that it's what they feel comfortable doing now. But the majority of people who are on the streets, they don't want to be on the streets. They want to be in a home. They want to be working. They want to do everything that everybody does. So it's not a simple case of saying that everybody wants to be on the streets. And secondly, we say, well, it's your fault because you're an addict. But again, we heard from Arif today that the majority of people, or a lot of people that you work with, they have no addictions, not alcohol, not drugs, nothing. Just people that ended up in these situations because of circumstance. And even when you come across people who are addicts, you really have to try and understand their story. If they became an addict because they took drugs at 12 years old, we tend to forgive 12-year-old people for their mistakes, do we not? As a community, we don't hold things against someone if they did something when they were 12 years old. These people just happen to have made a mistake which continues to live with them today because it's not easy to stop doing what they're doing. Some of these substances are highly addictive, and if you start to realize their stories and the reasons why they started doing what they're doing, we can't even be in a position to judge them because we don't know what it's like to go through the things that they are going through or have gone through. A lot of stories of abuse as children, family situations, so many different things that lead people to these situations. So I hope that today we learned that we can't judge a book by its cover, nor can we tar an entire group of people with the same brush. We can't say that everybody who is homeless is exactly the same or is homeless for exactly the same reasons. There are so many different reasons why a person might be in that position, and there are so many difficulties that a person in that position may face. So inshallah, if we see people in these positions, let's try and help the people that we can. Look for the avenues in which we can help them, even if we can't do it out of our own pocket. There are organizations set up around the city to help people in those positions. So inshallah, we'll be able to be the people that help the people in these positions, inshallah. So Jazakallah khair to everyone for tuning in. Inshallah, that is the show that we had for you today with Arif from Help the Homeless. But inshallah, we'll be doing this show regularly. I will be doing it once a week, every Monday. We'll be interviewing different people from the community in different areas. I will be talking to teachers, doctors, imams, different people from different sectors of our society who are commonly misunderstood, and people who might have a story to tell and they want to share their perceptions with you, because we want you to see people for the people they are. We have our assumptions when we go to school that my teacher's like this, my teacher does this, and they're not really normal people. But do you know that when your teacher go home, they just turn their PlayStation on and they play FIFA? Did you know that your teachers do that? You didn't know that your teachers do that. And you don't know what people who are in different situations to you are really like. So inshallah, we want to bring this episode and this series to you to really show you guys people from different backgrounds. So if you are someone who thinks that your profession or your industry or sector is misunderstood, give us a call on the radio station 0116 4822 086. Let us know you want to be interviewed. The seats are here. We've got 2 seats now waiting for all of our guests. So inshallah, if you want to come on the show, talk about you, your background and your area, then you're more than welcome to do that. But please do tune in, inshallah. We'll be here every single week from now on. Just find out now. We're going to close the show. We're going to close the show, inshallah, in the next 2 minutes. So Jazakallah khair to everyone for tuning in. This has been a walk in my footsteps. And today we try to walk in the footsteps of people who are homeless, who are struggling, and try to see things from what their perspectives might be like. Try to combat some of our misconceptions, because we hear a lot of things, we think a lot of things, and sometimes we just don't really know the other side of the story. So I hope that today, inshallah, we've had a chance to show you the other side of that story, open some eyes, and start to realize that we can't judge everybody the same way, inshallah. So Jazakallah khair to everybody who has tuned in. Tune in again next week. And actually, we are here tomorrow. We're doing a Tuesday special tomorrow. We're going to be interviewing somebody who works in the educational sector. So as we talked about, when the kids go to school, they don't really believe the teacher has their best interest at heart. They think they're weird people, they're robots, they're aliens, they're strange, they don't care about us, and they're not normal. How come they like doing all of this kind of stuff? So let's find out tomorrow, what is it really like from the perspective of somebody in the education system. So make sure you tune into that at 5 p.m. tomorrow. Give us a call, drop comments below, and let us know what you think of the show. And inshallah, we will catch up with you tomorrow and then every Monday. Jazakallah khair for tuning in. Do subscribe if you're on YouTube. Haj Radio is going to be having incredible shows throughout the month of Ramadan, inshallah. If you're on Facebook, smash the like button. And if you haven't, share the messages with people, share the broadcast with people. Whoever calls people to good, inshallah, will have a reward like those that do the good as well, inshallah. So share this message with people, inshallah, people will benefit. Jazakallah khair.